During the 90s alternative rock explosion, several female singer-songwriters rose to prominence, but few were as distinctive or as widely praised as Polly Jean Harvey. Her first collection of albums established her as one of the most individual and influential songwriters of the decade, as she explored themes of sex, love and religion with unnerving honesty, dark humour and twisted theatricality. PJ Harvey recorded film soundtracks, acted in a few movies, had poetry published, exhibited sculptures in galleries across Britain and continues to release critically acclaimed 5-star albums.
Check, 1, 2.
You know, I don't look like a rock star, I don't sing like a rock star.
That's where a lot of these songs came from.
It's not encouraged to grow up.
Well, you know something about it.
I've never heard anything like that. Really?
And I'll give you a counting of 5, 4.
Every creative expression is a snapshot of a moment.
Polly, album-wise, the Her album. If you take the way that album was made and what you did in the studio with it, which is basically you played most of the instruments this time around, except for maybe the percussion and stuff, you used to have a collection of songs together and say, this is going to be my next album, now I'm going to really pick and take a long time picking the producer. You produced this album yourself, why?
It's something I'd always wanted to do. I'd always envisaged doing that at some point when I felt ready. And it was the first time that I felt that the songs weren't lacking in an awful lot, you know, because often I write songs and demo them at home and I feel I can hear how they will grow and become in the studio, and that it seems there's got to be quite a lot of shaping done with them. But these, I didn't feel like that. They were making me feel something as they were, and I was loath to interrupt that too much, and I sort of just asked myself if I felt, well, maybe this should be the record that I do that. And it just felt like the right time, really.
Did you get to like the studio at all, or do you still absolutely hate it?
I don't enjoy being in the studio at all. I think I've got worse at it as I've got older. I find it less and less comfortable, and I've become somebody that finds it much easier to access the emotion I want to try and put into a song when I'm at home, comfortable in my own surroundings, and less able to do it in a studio, or it involves so much more effort of mind to get to that place. And I also think that when I've written a song and I demo it at home, to then try and recreate something of that moment again later on down the line feels so fake to me and so not right. And of course you have to sort of let go of it and let it become something else, which I find quite difficult to do, because I don't think you can't replicate something. And I know that when I've written a song, it's very fresh in my mind. It's like it's written because it's part of my everyday at that time, and you can never be more in touch with that song than that moment of writing.
You said earlier then about like the producer business of being so meticulous as to trying to pick the exact producer for a sound that you might have in your head for this collection of songs, i.e. I want my next album to sound a certain way. Would it be the same thing with musicians? Because I do know like that, you know, the bunch of musicians that you always have are never permanent. They'll know that before they come in to work with you. Would you ever think, though, in those terms, saying, this bunch of songs needs that kind of bass playing that I heard there, or that kind of guitar that I heard there, so I'll ring up these guys and bring them in?
Yeah, I always choose who I'm working with according to the songs. That's always the bottom line. You just listen to what they need, or what they don't need, really. If, like now, I'm getting my head around working towards a new album, and I hear the collection of songs that I have, and I think, what do I need to stop them becoming too much like this? Because they could very easily go that route, and I don't want them to. So that's, you know, that I can do it in that way as well, of using people to know where I don't want it to go, and I know that using those people will help me not take it there.
Okay, I was going to ask, are you a perfectionist? But I'm going to ask myself, and I'll answer it myself. Are you a perfectionist? Yes, she is. Is perfectionism a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a plus or a hindrance?
I think it's served me well more than it's done me harm. I do think it can be detrimental it can be limiting. So, for instance, like what you were saying about why not be freer in the studio and try it like that, or take half-written songs in, and that's the perfectionist part of me that finds that quite terrifying, you know, because also I have a very clear idea of how I want things to be.
Yeah.
And I have a very clear idea of what I'm trying to do with this song. And I feel that if I can't see that through to its as far as I can take it myself, while I know that the essence of what I want is very strong, before it gets diluted with other people being around, I just don't think I'm going to get there. And so I do think it's worked better for me than not being that way. And I also think that it helps me do good work. I mean, I think I could be much more throwaway if I wasn't so perfectionist about things, i.e. like you might see a song halfway through and you know it's not quite there yet, but think, oh, well, I'll do it later when we're there. And maybe that song would never reach its full potential. When I first started out, the very first album I made, I radically wanted to do nothing of what was expected of me. So in the studio, for instance, I wouldn't allow our engineer head at the time, I wouldn't allow him to put any effects on anything. Everything was completely dry. We played it all live apart from about 2 overdubs. And still, when I came to make my second record with Steve, I knew I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted it to be very live. I also had just signed with a major label for the first time. I'd just signed with Island. And it was almost like I wanted them to know that they can never tell me what to do, basically. And so I almost wanted to make a very difficult record, almost testing the ground with my relationship with them, and say, this is what I'm doing, and knowing that it was completely uncommercial, you know, I mean, in their terms. And that's why I chose Steve, because he does that very well. He records a band as you sound, and it's not particularly radio friendly, you know, it sounds like a band in a room with all of its mistakes and dissonance and everything, and so that's why I chose to work with him, because I knew he wouldn't let me down, and just we would sound as we sounded.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And when you have new songs, when you have them together, when you think these might be the songs I might use in the next album, but you haven't recorded them yet, or else you haven't got them together as an album yet, do you put them in front of an audience and test them? And do you ever get shocked and say, oh gosh, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they don't seem to like that?
Again, that's something I started doing lately, in the last maybe 4 years or so, and I do think I will try out all these things eventually, but yeah, I've only just been able to have the confidence to start doing that.
How do you think that people see PJ Harvey now, 7 or 8 or 9 albums down the line, as opposed to